All right, says we're live. So hello everyone and welcome to the Good Old Gamer. So YouTube being YouTube, it's not showing me the preview. So if you guys can let me know that you can see and hear me, that would be absolutely wonderful. I'm going to try to get this thing refreshed so it looks like everything's actually working on my end. But yeah, so today's video is impromptu. I was not expecting Nvidia to release all the information about their upcoming RTX 4060 Ti's, as there are now two of them, which we pretty much suspected here for a little while. And I figured I'd want to chat with you guys about this. This is obviously going to be a pretty hot topic. We've chatted about it a lot over on the Techonomics podcast, which if you are not subscribed, links are in the description down below, so you can go ahead and check that one out. Let's see, we got good to go. All right, cool. Yeah, there we go. Everybody's saying it's good. Cool. So yeah, this one I think I'm going to leave up on the channel. I don't think this is going to be as long as my regular streams. Tomorrow's stream will still be going on. Where this system is here for, that is the i7 4770K, and we're using the RTX 2080 Ti. Now, this is what Jay over at Jay's 2 Cents put together, and yeah, I decided to show what can be done if you put a little bit of love into it, and the results are actually really good, so I'm really excited for that. So that's still going on. So if you're not subscribed to this channel, please go ahead and do so, and you don't want to miss that. That's going to be a lot of fun. I'm very excited for that. But here today, I figured I want to get your guys' reaction to this new announcement, because this is a watershed moment, I would say, in the PC gaming world. We're officially at the point now, because this is from Nvidia, where entry-level graphics cards now go up to $499. Now, you might be saying, these aren't entry-level graphics cards. Yes, they are. Even if you wanted to be generous, the top-end SKU is just a 3060 replacement. But in reality, entry-level cards are typically 128-bit cards, which every single one of these cards announced are. So, to me, this is a big deal. I actually think that they might be able to pull this off, but we'll go through all the specs and all that sort of stuff if you're not familiar, which I'm assuming most of you guys have seen some of the coverage here today. But if you haven't, we'll quickly go through that here in a little bit once we get everybody in. And then, yeah, I just kind of want to chat with you guys. I'll let you know my thoughts on the situation. There are some positives. So we'll try to look at the positives. We'll definitely be focusing in on the negatives, and yeah, we'll just chat about like how we feel about this, where we think the market's going to go, how the reaction's going to go, and all that sort of stuff. Connor, welcome, buddy. You said if it was 10 gigabyte 160-bit bus and 20% faster, well, yeah, if it was more, I'd be happy with the 4060 Ti, to be honest. Yeah, of course, if it was a better card, I think we would all be happier. I mean, you know, everybody would have their performance targets. As you guys can see here, I have my 3060 Ti box, just to prove I am a 3060 Ti owner. It's upstairs in my PC in the living room. And I can definitely say none of these cards would entice me to upgrade. Like, none of this is an interesting upgrade from this card right over here, which can be had for as little as like 280 bucks if you get one used on eBay. I think I got the For the Win 3 shipped and taxes and everything. It's like $315 or $320. So yeah, that's the real hard part here, I think, for Nvidia and AMD to compete with, is just the fact that there's so many previous gen cards out there. And these new cards just really aren't a whole lot faster, which we know Nvidia is going to put their GPU in the best possible light, and they gave us actual numbers. And it's not impressive with their massaged Nvidia numbers. So we'll go over that here in a little bit. Let's see what you guys are talking about here in the chat. Just like on our regular streams, we'll give it about 15-20 minutes before we get in there and start talking about everything. Maybe a little sooner. I just don't know how long this stream's going to go for. There's only really so much for us to talk about. But Shadow Fox, welcome, buddy. He's one of our competitors here on the channel. But yeah, let's see what you guys are talking about. And $4.99, isn't it $399. No, the 16 gig is $499 officially. So all it is the same card with more RAM. So yes, entry level is up to $500. Connor saying there's nothing stopping them from making a 160-bit bus. Well, it'd have to be a cut down 10, what do they call it? 104 die, which sure they could do that, I suppose. But then once again, what's the 104 die size? I don't even know. Let's get this pulled up. I got some tech power up slides over here, and we can pull up a 4070 Ti, whatever, it doesn't matter. It's the same die. So let me get you guys over there. Let's take a look at that's the 60 Ti. I'm going to compare that directly to the 3060 Ti and show you guys why it's just not not really impressive. All right, but let's see. We have 300 millimeters squared for the 4070 Ti, and then the 4060 Ti is over 100 millimeters squared less. So this is significantly cheaper to produce, like significantly. You're like, well, it's 50% bigger. Yeah, but it's probably going to cost more than 50% due to yields and a bunch of other factors. Now, granted, if you're going to cut it down and all the rest of that, the yields really aren't a problem, but still the cost will be at least 50% higher. That just means that the pricing would be higher. Now, Nvidia could have made just a chip with a 160-bit bus and cut it down, but then I don't know, like it just doesn't make a lot of sense. For them, it just makes more sense maybe later on to start cutting this one down, because they'll have extras that are really defective, and then bin this out to a 160-bit bus just makes more sense long term than just building like a whole other die, which costs a lot of money in and of itself for a single SKU. So yeah, there's just no way for them to really put enough lipstick on this card, I think, for a lot of people. Now, while a lot of people are mad about this, it's at least not a regression, which I guess we could honestly say some of the tiers are kind of a regression. This will be basically faster at everything, just not by much. And we'll take a look at what Nvidia was saying before. But yeah, that's the main reason why they can't cut this down that far. Not yet, anyway. It's too expensive. Too expensive. That's basically where Nvidia's at. They're not going to drop their margins. You need to throw that one out the window, unfortunately. Professor VR, thank you for the $4.99. He says, thanks for the stream. Really appreciate the direction from life. Oh, the distraction from life. Well, I'll give you direction or a distraction. Either way, you're welcome, buddy. Previous gen Nvidia cards still incredibly overpriced in my region. Yeah, I mean, around the world, yeah, some places it just sucks. It seems like the push is still for new stuff. Dudes who bought during the boom seem to want to lose a lot of money, or not want to lose a lot of money. Yeah, I mean, there's that too. And then, of course, them moving to the TSMC 4 nanometer and basically quadrupling the production cost for Nvidia, that obviously helps those guys out tremendously, because that stuff's going to be pushed off. The 104 is tiny. They could just use rejected silicon. Well, the 4070 Ti is technically cut down, so that's reject silicon right there. And then the 4070 Ti and 4070, they're already using their reject silicon. So it has to be like so terribly mangled that they might get 1 or 2 chips per wafer that are just so bad that they could sell at a 160-bit bus, because it's like, well, we could either do this or it's going in the trash bin, because literally PC gamers are the last stop before the trash bin. If they can't sell it to us, then it gets thrown out, because it's just not, they can't do anything with it. There is no more bottom of the barrel than the PC gamer. So a lot of people be like, well, why don't they give you the full die? Because the full die goes to the professional market. The people that spend $3, $4, $5, $6, $7, $10,000. They get the full dies first. Then they'll probably do a refresh. They might give the full die to to the gaming market eventually if they have to, or if they just have enough supply of it, meaning yields are so good, then they'll go ahead and do it. But in reality, it makes sense to cut off 1 or 2 SMs every time for the PC gaming market because it brings the cost down and allows you to charge a little premium for the super high-end stuff. We were talking about this in the Discord. I forgot who it was. I'll give you a shout. Let me go back in my Discord here. Who was it that was talking about the A4000? I think it might have been Professor VR. Oh man, we talked about a lot of stuff here today. Well, anyways, too many to go through. Anyways, we were talking about that, and they're like, yeah, not the A4000, the RTX 4000 SFF. And they're like, this thing has more CUDA cores than the 4070. It's like, yeah, but it's a $1,250 GPU. If you want to spend over $1,000 on a graphics card, Nvidia will give you some good stuff. And this is, we talked about it on Techonomics the other day. It's very clear that that's where Nvidia's going. It's like, either you pay them the money they want, or they're gonna just offer you what they can. They're still gonna make their margins, but they have to cut it down super far. So in reality, it's actually a net negative for us as the consumer, for Nvidia to be on advanced process nodes. Like, if they stuck with Samsung and could somehow achieve these same performance levels, that would have been much better for us because they can keep their margins, but prices would be lower because the cost to them would be a lot lower. So they're really putting themselves in a position where I'm like, don't go to the advanced node. I don't want to see them on 3 nanometer for like 20 years, right? Like, just keep innovating. If you can get that 20 to 30% every generation, this is where you have to go. But in reality, that's not possible. So they do have to eventually move up into newer nodes. And once again, NVIDIA's, they're not going to lower their margins. So what that means is if they're paying 4 times as much for a thing, and they don't want to charge you 4 times as much because it wouldn't sell, what they're going to do is they're going to just sell you half the stuff and then charge you more for it. And they'll kind of balance it out. So that's why everything's happening the way it's happening. Not saying it's right. I don't agree with a $400 to $500 entry-level graphics card myself, but this is the reason why it is what it is. And it stems from a lot of problems. A lack of competition with TSMC, a lack of competition from the memory manufacturers, because they, those are kind of fixed costs. NVIDIA can't really do much about those. They can try to negotiate, and whatever it is what it is. Now, of course, they can go with a different fab, but nobody's at the level of TSMC right now. So kind of stuck, right? They did the Samsung thing last gen to keep prices halfway reasonable. And then once again, the memory technology, they're using G6X on their high performance stuff. As far as I know, that's Micron, I believe, or Hynix, one of them. But they collaborate with them, and they're really the only ones making it. And it's very, very expensive compared to regular G6, which I think the big three, I think, are all making G6 now. So yeah, there's a lot of extra costs there to deliver the super high performance stuff that a lot of PC gamers want. So it's kind of a big balancing act for them. Now, ultimately, what it comes down to for us is, do any of these things make any sense? I suppose I already kind of let the cat out of the bag by showing the 3060 Ti and going, no, that does not make a whole lot of sense. Connor saying 32 megs of cache is not enough to fix 288 gigabytes, in my opinion. Well, let's take a look. We do have precedents for this. I gotta scroll up a pretty good ways. Where are we at? There we go. All right, let me get you guys on over. So this is basically the tier of graphics card we're talking about. This is why I'm calling these things entry level, because they are basically the competitor to the RX 6600 series, or a successor to that. Now, the Nvidia one was the RTX 3050, but it didn't have the large cache, so not exactly as comparable as this. This would be the most comparable example, the 6600 or the 6600 XT. So let's take a look at the memory bandwidth on this one. So it's effectively the same memory bandwidth that we're getting from Nvidia. It's actually a bit worse. And this only had 32 megs of L3 cache. This card did and still does run 1080p just fine. So I don't think that that's going to be an issue. The real issue is it's a $400 to $500 card, and it's not a 1440p card. Just like this is not a 1440p card. I have two of them. I can definitively say it's definitely a 1080p card. Even though the cores and everything else on the 4060 Ti will be faster, and it has a little bit more bandwidth. For modern games, 1440p will be off the table. So it's just going to be a 1080p high card. No ray tracing. Ray tracing is also off the table, but ray tracing is pretty much off the table for all cards that aren't like 3090 or faster, in my opinion. So that's all RDNA 2s off the table, and yeah, so ray tracing to me just isn't really a concern for this level of graphics card. Oh look, by the way, it's also PCIe 4 8X. So yeah, this is the most comparable thing you have to these new cards from Nvidia. And yeah, for 1080p, it'll be just fine. If you're wanting to go higher than that, unless it's an older title, yeah, it'll do 1440p. Even 4K is fine on this card, depending on how far back you want to go. But for modern games, no. They are definitely 1080p cards. They better get more garbage bins because that's what the 4060 Ti is. Yeah, well, the 3060 Ti, I think they learned from this one. The 3060 Ti basically killed the 3070 because the 3070, while having 20% more CUDA cores, in reality, that doesn't equate to much in real world performance. That's like 5 to 10%, depending on the situation, because they both had 256-bit memory bus. They both had the exact same memory bandwidth and the exact same memory capacity. So the 3070 literally made no sense the second this thing came out, because you're going to lose maybe 5 to 7%, right? So it's like, that's not worth it. You could just throw an overclock on this. You'll be faster than a stock 3070. Now, granted, an overclock 3070 will yet again be faster than this, but not by enough to justify the $100. So there was just no way they were going to make that mistake again. So I was always expecting the 4070 and 4060 Ti, if there was one. Still doesn't make sense why this thing's even out, personally. But if there was, if they were going to come out, there's going to be a bigger gap there to make the 4070s at least make some sort of sense. Now, granted, what Nvidia should have done last gen was an 8GB version of this and a 16GB 4070. Then you're not just talking about the meager performance gains. It would mostly just be to go ahead and get to the, that bigger VRAM. But due to mining and stuff, all that stuff went out the window. It was make the cheapest thing possible and sell it for the highest price. But I guarantee you there would have been a 3070 that would have been 16 gigabytes had the mining boom not happened. That's just my thing. Panicaba, thank you so much. 55 Canadian. We got the Octopine. Octopus Peen? Okay. All right. I forgot what you said on Techonomics, but it was along the same lines. Are we shooting for E-Peen? Because you're at half compete, man. Half compete. If you get to full compete, then you got all the peen, man. Which, by the way, if you're new, to be competitive, you don't have to buy the latest technology. You don't need a $1,600, $1,700 graphics card. You don't even need to play the game. If you just want to feel good about yourself, know that you are the smartest, most handsome, righteous person in PC gaming. You have the best PC. You're always right. You can do so by just doing a $100 donation, or you can do 250s. Either way, if you get up to 100, you are competitive. You're always right. I'm wrong if I disagree with you. Just the way that it goes. It's just a little funny thing that we do here. So this way, it saves you money in the long run, and it helps support the channel. So I want to thank everybody who does that. All right, let's see. See what you guys got. Samsung 8nm, 1200mm square die at low clocks. Yeah, just, I mean, Samsung is so cheap. Like, just give me the whole wafer, right? Like, the whole wafer is just one die, and you can cut it down to like 15 different SKUs because the defects will be all over the map with something like that. And honestly, it might even be cheaper than what they're doing now. Yeah, that's why I'm saying, like, there's so many more factors here that people just gloss over. TSMC effectively being a monopoly right now. That's a real problem. And the fact that GDDR7 is not ready for prime time, so they have to stick with the G6X, which wasn't a big deal last gen because it was only on the 30. Well, I guess it was on the 3070 Ti on up. But this gen, they even had to put it on the 4070, which is really like the 3060 Ti replacement. So they basically needed to put it on 2 tiers lower because there's just not fast enough RAM available. So they had to use the G6X, which is significantly more expensive than the regular stuff. Which is why I'm surprised they didn't make a 3070 16 gig, because that one didn't have G6X. That would have been a lot cheaper. Also, we know the 4 gig DIMMs didn't show up until early last year, you know, when the 3090 Ti was announced, because that one used 4 gig DIMMs. So that was around the time that the G6X 4 gig DIMMs came out. So yeah, there was a lot of holdups there on that particular one. New Tech saying if the 6600 keeps the $200 to $250 price point, then it will be effectively the same price as the 4060 Ti will reach. So SS smartest's opinion or option. Smartest this option. I mean, the 4060 Ti will never reach that price point. The 3050 has never really hit its MSRP. The lower end Nvidia cards will always be significantly higher. There's a certain price point, and I think Nvidia knows that it's around the $300 mark, that people will just do it. They will just pay the extra $100 or something for the Nvidia card, and this is a real problem for AMD and Intel. Intel at least kind of figured out if we give a crap ton of VRAM, which doesn't really matter to be honest, because the card's just not fast enough. It's not even as fast as this card. So why does it need more RAM? Well, because it's a selling tactic, and some people, you know, use their GPUs for things other than gaming, where that VRAM might be useful. So it just makes their stuff more appealing. AMD not coming out with the 16 gig 7600 is really strange. Because that's literally the only selling point for AMD. They have two selling points. We offer you more VRAM, which is cool. I mean, you know, that's nice. It's a selling point. And then we're cheaper for similar performance. Cool. That's all they got. Those are their only two tricks. And the fact that they're leaving one of those off the table, and from the sound of things, if that comes in, the 7600 comes in at $299, they're not even going to be offering better pricing. I have a feeling it'll land somewhere around the 4060. If it wins, it's going to be by less than 10%, so it's an irrelevant win, even if it does win. But I don't think it will. I think it'll actually lose by a couple of percent. It'll basically be a wash, in my opinion. So it'll be the same card, just from AMD for the same money, with less features. There's no reason for anybody to buy it. Now, AMD could come out at $250, and then it makes a little bit of sense, but like I said, most people will just spring the extra $50 for all the Nvidia stuff. Time and time again, this has been shown. So AMD really missed the boat by not slamming 16 gigs on that card, especially after their tweets like, oh, we got the VRAM. All right, cool. You know, that's a selling feature. It's a hot selling feature right now. I think it's quite silly for slow cards like this or the 4060 or 4060 Ti to need a crap ton of VRAM, because they're just not fast enough. They're not going to be ray tracing. They're not going to be running 1440p, and they're not going to be running, you know, so if you're at 1080p, you don't need ultra textures. It's not going to be perceivable at 1080p. So to me, it's quite silly, but it's at least a selling option, and Nvidia figured that out. Connor saying it might actually be worth sticking with 4 nanometer and just going to larger, more efficient for 50 series and keep pricing reasonable. Yeah, NVIDIA will not change nodes next gen. They know that this generation was a massive price hike because of their massive price hike. Remember, NVIDIA is paying way more money to make this stuff. So, yeah, of course they're going to pass it on to you. They don't care whether you buy or not. It's mostly just, all right, it's costing us 4 times more. If we make the same die size, we're going to have to charge you 4 times more. They knew that wouldn't fly. So the other option is we have to sell you half the GPU for like 50% more money. Like, that was the compromise that they made internally. So this way they could hold on to their margins. And if, once again, if AMD was hyper competitive or Intel were hyper competitive to the point where they were like, nah, we're good. We're going to sell you the same size die as last gen, and we're going to sell it to you at the same price as last gen, and we're just going to eat it. We're going to eat all of that cost. Then Nvidia would be forced to cut into their margins. But AMD is not doing that. We know that for a fact. The 7600, like I just talked about, clearly shows that AMD is unwilling to compete in that arena with single-digit margins. They're just not going to do it. Intel maybe, because they need the market share more than anything else. So there's just no competition at that level either. So there's no it's basically monopoly on top of monopoly on top of monopoly, and then poof, here we are. If you want to know the unfortunate train that has led to this station. Now there is good news. There's good news. This thing exists. It's got 11 gigs of VRAM, and it's amazing. This is the card to buy. If you don't need 4K 120, you just buy that. The 352-bit bus is way nicer. The frame times in games, so good, so good. I'm now becoming a GPU snob to where I'm like, if it's under 320-bit, I just don't want to talk about it anymore. Because your 1% lows are so much higher because of that extra memory bandwidth. That's why I keep saying the VRAM amount doesn't really matter that much in terms of raw performance, because you can always lower texture settings. You can't make the GPU significantly faster. You can't like triple your memory bandwidth. Can't do that. So I'd rather have the lower VRAM and then the higher memory bandwidth, which in this case, we're getting neither. So that's pretty unfortunate. All right, so I think we've waffled on enough. We're about 27 minutes in. We got 97 people watching. If you haven't smashed the like button, if you could please do so, we can get more people in here. And yeah, let's go ahead and see exactly what's going on. We've been beating around the bush for a few minutes. Let me get you guys switched. All right, so we're just going to jump over to video cards because they do the nice little summary at the end, which I like. So Nvidia, if you were living under a rock, Nvidia announces the GeForce RTX 4060 Ti at $399, which, you know, naming scheme and price, at first that sounds pretty good. It's like, oh, yeah, this guy over here, that was $399. Yeah, okay. And then the 4060 to launch in July at $299. This one actually surprised me. I got this one dead right. Everybody's like, no, it'll be $499 or $450. I was like, no, it's not going to be more expensive. It's going to be the same price. And then this one I thought was going to be $329. I thought it was going to be a little bit faster relative. This isn't going to be like any faster than a 3060 Ti. This will be a decent bit faster than a 3060 because the 3060 was quite slow. But it's going to be faster and cheaper, but it's going to be an 8 gig card, so you're going to lose memory for more speed. So I think that from Nvidia's standpoint, this is a fair compromise because they can't give you 12 gigabytes on a 128-bit bus. We've debated this before. They might be able to do it with jiggery and pokery, but that'll just lead to more problems. So yeah, they weren't going to do that. So to make up for that, they're knocking 10% off, and they'll give you more performance relative to the other one. The 4060 Ti is the real problem. Then, of course, a 16 gig model, which will also be coming in July at $499, which I mathed this out. That's actually about right. Keeping NVIDIA's margins intact and everybody in the supply chain's margin intact, this is about what this would cost. They're taking a little bit of extra on top, but not a lot, like $5-10. Not a lot extra on this one compared to this one in terms of NVIDIA's margins. But, and a lot of people are mad about that. $100 for 8 gigs? It's like, well, you have to understand the 4 gig DIMMs versus the 2 gig DIMMs, significantly more expensive. So, even if you say this costs NVIDIA $40-50, somewhere in that range, which sounds about right. Yeah, then you gotta throw 60% on top of that, plus, you know, distributors, AIBs, system integrators, retailers. Yeah, you're going to be damn close to $100. All right, so anyways, let's get back in here. So we got the 4060 Ti, the 8 gig coming May 24th. That is in 6 days. So this is coming out pretty quick. 16 gig in July. Okay, so we pretty much went over all of that. Let's see. Let's go down here. Performance numbers. Now, this is where this gets fun. So the 4060, we have the 3060 right here and the 4060. These are Nvidia numbers, so remember, these are likely massaged to be as favorable to their new card as possible. All right, so up here they have the with frame gen. Ignore those because I don't recommend you use the technology. If you need higher performance, go spend the money. Now, if you have a 4090 and for some reason you can't run the game, I think that's a developer problem, in my opinion. But anyways, as you can see here, they're showing what? That maybe 10 FPS there, 10 FPS there, 10 FPS there. So about 10 FPS across the board, but considering we're somewhere around the 60 FPS mark, 50, 60s, and that's about a 20% bump. Let's just ballpark it. That's pretty good. I would say that it's on the low side, but it is a generational uplift. But like I said, the 3060 was so unbelievably weak that this was always going to be significantly better. Where things kind of fall down is this one, the 3060 Ti. And compared to, or the 4060 Ti compared to the 3060 Ti. And as you can see, those margins are much, much lower. They show Metro Exodus quite the gain here. Not sure how that's doing a thing, but they are, were they doing ray tracing? Yeah, ray tracing's on, that's why. So in Metro, the ray tracing chops are kicking in. But if you take off the ray tracing, it's going to be largely the same. And like I said, for cards of this class, ray tracing, I don't know, just not really worth it in my opinion, because you need DLSS to get these numbers, which you shouldn't be using DLSS. Also, in my opinion. Image quality and motion for me is just so horribly degraded. I don't recommend it. You're just better off buying a faster graphics card. But anyways, the performance uplift here versus the 3060 Ti is minuscule. It'll end up probably being 5% at the end of the day. Maybe 7. It'll be less than 10% overall, from my guess. So, these cards make no sense. You're getting effectively the same card at effectively the same price, which a lot of people are upset about, but it's not worse, right? We're literally at the stage of going, well, it's not worse. It's just not better. And I'm more interested to see this card, because this does have 256-bit. I guarantee you this is probably going to be better for 1440p, whereas this card is a 1440p card. I don't think this one is, and that's a real problem. And then that really just makes this card completely useless. The 4060 Ti 16 gig, this is just to placate all the crazy people out there who think really weak graphics cards need lots of VRAM. Because this is just not going to be fast enough for it to matter. The biggest thing is obviously going to be the memory bandwidth. And before you go, but my cache, AMD played the same card or trick last year. It helps, but it's not that effective. And in fact, the cache is, at least on AMD side, can run out, just like on the X3D CPUs. If you exceed the cache, your performance goes down the toilet. So relying on cache is not the best way to go, in my opinion. So that's the big news. Now, what's the upside here? The upside really is the fact that these don't really draw any power. These are very, very light on power. And we got this one also on video cards. We're finally going to be getting smaller graphics cards. And this is exciting for anybody who wants a small form factor build. It's kind of strange that there's no, I mean, single fans kind of suck, but maybe like small dual fans on something like a 4070. I don't know why that's not a thing. But yeah, we're finally getting some smaller graphics cards, so this way you can do some small form factor builds. And I did want to show you guys this one, which there's an affiliate link down below if you do want to pick one up. I have one of these sitting in my garage. This is a really cool little ITX case. And what I like about this particular case, let me scroll down here. Number one, you'll need a small graphics card like I was showing you. You can only go up to, was it 195 millimeters in total length? There it is, right there. They have it right here. These are the specs that you need, but you can fit in a dual slot GPU in a super tiny form factor like this, and it will work. I have the RX 6600 from Power Color, the fighter. It might fit. The 6600 Sapphire Pulse will fit inside of here, which is a dual fan, by the way. So you can fit some decent graphics cards in a system this size, and you can get yourself, especially now with something like a 4060 Ti, a real console-sized console killer. So that's the upside. The low power draw will allow for this to become a reality. If you want something that's super portable, super tiny, just super cool looking. I'm planning on doing a build with this on the channel. I was actually going to scrap it because I know nobody's going to be interested in these cards. Like, I know nobody is. But if you want something, you can either get this or you can get the, the RTX 4000 SFF. You could do that, but that's $1,200. I would much rather spend the $400 for the same performance on something like this, because this is about the same performance of the 4000 SFF. Was that a third the price? And you can jam that in this machine. So that's the major upside that I can see from this launch, is if you are interested in this sort of stuff. You're used to paying a premium, so $400 for a graphics card is not crazy. But I did want to let you know, if you wanted to go with a RX 6600, the Sapphire Pulse will fit in this. And those are like $200. So you can make a really cool little machine. So yeah, I'll probably do a build on this. Let me know in the chat if you want to see that, or if it's just something like I'll just do on the side and maybe bring up at some point. But let's switch you guys on back. So yeah, that's the main news. I do want to see what you guys have to say about all of this. So let's check the chat, see what you guys are talking about. If you're paying 500 plus, you should be getting 16 gigs of RAM. Even Nvidia understands this. I don't know, man. Like Connor and I kind of agree. Like the VRAM, I'd rather have a 384-bit 12 gig card than a 16 gig card any day of the week. Like, the memory bandwidth is far more important than most people realize. The actual VRAM capacity can be overcome. Limitations in VRAM can be overcome very easily, assuming you have at least a 6 gig card. 4 gig cards be a little tough, and below 4 gigs, just that's not a thing anymore. Not with modern games. I have a 1650 Super, and it can play The Last of Us. Yeah, I used the 6600 and a Ryzen 5600. I had no issues with The Last of Us. 1080p high did dip below 60. 1080p medium, no problems at all. I left textures at high, by the way. But that game's a dumpster fire. That is... I tried that on this. Like, we'll do it tomorrow as well, but Hogwarts and Resident Evil have no problems running on the i7 4770K. But The Last of Us is just a dumpster fire. It just really shows how poorly optimized that game is relative to the even the other games that aren't good. Jedi Survivor, I'm just not paying full price for that, guys. We'll have to wait. AV1 plus 512 tensor cores plus 16 gigs of VRAM. ARC A770 is about to AI explode. Okay. The A770 is pretty good. If you just play AAA games, it's actually perfectly fine. Even older ones. It's just once you go off the beaten path, it has some issues. Actually, I have it in this system right now. It also doesn't like my TV, my LG OLED. So, like, if once it disables the monitors, it won't come back on the television unless I do a reboot. I think that might be a driver thing. I'll just have to check out some new drivers, because it used to work and then it stopped working. $400 for 8 gigs of VRAM. Just get a used 3080. For high, Nvidia is high AF. They think people will buy this. Well, people will buy this. I've already seen the tech press reaction to this. Most of them are either meh or slightly positive. So that means people are going to buy this. And the fact that the 3060 Ti's are still above MSRP, and even the 3070s are basically still MSRP, and they're still top sellers, people are going to buy these because it's going to be the same thing at the same price or slightly faster. And there's really no option from AMD at this point in time to really challenge that. Now, yeah, I agree. I'd much rather spend $500, go on eBay and get either a 3080, or even better, spend 320-ish bucks. I got this for 325 plus taxes and stuff. So let's just say 350. This is basically I guess you can say an RX 6800 level card just with Nvidia features. And yeah, things perfectly fine. Like I said, the only downside is it doesn't have HDMI 2.1. Goal, thank you so much for the 25 Mexican pesos. He says, Sony games are needlessly heavy on CPU, except for God of War. Horizon wasn't too bad. Horizon ran pretty easy. But it could just be the way that they port them over or something. I don't really know. It's not like consoles have that much CPU horsepower. Now, the Sony games are highly optimized for the PS5 ecosystem, which is completely different than a PC. So the way that the game fetches data and all of that. So it just might be hard translating that over to the way PCs do things, and that could be it. I'm not really sure. Once we get our game dev guy on Techonomics, that's actually a really good question to ask him. Let's see what you guys got going on. Of course, enough. Not for The Last of Us. Well, the 12100 could probably do it. I don't know if I tried it or not. Yeah, a 2013 quad core, not enough. That's for sure. But, like I said, still enough for Hogwarts, which is pretty hilarious. Wouldn't be surprised if the 3060 Ti would beat the 4060 Ti. In some memory bandwidth heavy 1440p games. Yeah, no, I fully expect the 4060 Ti to lose at 1440p a lot of the time. And it'll definitely lose at 4K. So yeah, it's kind of a here's the same performance, just with new features. That's basically what Nvidia is giving you. So that one I don't see being received all that well. But the 16 gig model is going to sell because there's a lot of just crazy people out there like, I needs my VRAM, and don't realize, like I said, this thing's cheaper and will destroy it. 3080 is cheaper and will destroy it. 6800 is cheaper and will destroy it. There's just a lot of people out there that just don't understand. Don't buy this generation unless you're buying a 4090. Maybe the 7900 XT once that gets cheap enough. It's getting there. I'd say it's $700. The 7900 XT will probably be the second GPU of this generation that's actually worth considering. But as of right now, it's not quite there yet. And we're sitting with one graphics card that makes sense out of the entire lineup. Outside of the small form factor thing, which, like I said, at least there's that. There is a benefit to these cards, but it's a super niche benefit. Spider-Man ran very well. No, Spider-Man is horribly CPU bound. Absolutely terribly CPU bound. Which is what he was saying. He was saying that all the Sony games are needlessly CPU limited. And Spider-Man is definitely one of them. It's just that it gets limited at such a high point, nobody cares. It's like breaching past about 90 FPS on the 1% lows. You need like top tier CPUs to do that. But once again, it's 90 FPS for a game that's fine at 60. So that's why that's not a problem. Basically, you can get crappy CPUs to acceptable levels. It's just these newer games are having some issues with that. The only new SKUs are the 4080 and 4090. It's a false generation. Well, I mean, that's typically the case. You usually only get 2 cards above the previous gen. Turing only had 1. Was it Ampere had 1? Because I don't count the 3090. I guess you could say the 3090 Ti maybe. Because the 3080, 3080 Ti, 3090 are basically all the same performance level. And the 3090 Ti was tacked on too late to really count. So yeah, like last gen, there was really only 1 card above the 2080 Ti. So yeah, They just made a lot of SKUs with almost no performance difference. That's what Nvidia did. I'm surprised that the 4080 has stayed at 1200 and nobody even talks about the card anymore. Well, like I said, Nvidia as a company, they're a monopoly. They're an effective monopoly. I've been saying this for a long time. So they set how much money they want to make off of a product. And we talked about on Techonomics the other day, the fact that there's such a high demand in AI, their revenues will remain pretty good. Their margins will actually increase. The less gaming GPUs they sell, the higher their overall margins will look. And that's going to make investors happy, even though revenues will be down. Effectively, they can just go, this is the price. And that's the end of it. You either buy it or you don't. Eventually, prices will have to drop when the new series comes out. But until Nvidia beats Nvidia, there's nobody else beating Nvidia. So they can literally do whatever they want. So, and they know if they just hold the line, eventually people that want faster than, let's say, a 3090, 3090 Ti, 6950 XT, if you need more performance than that, your only options are buy AMD, which is only slightly cheaper than the Nvidia card, or you buy the Nvidia card at the price that Nvidia wants to sell you the card. This is unfortunately, like I said, the consequence of having a monopoly. Volk saying AV1 encoding equals money. Intel is giving it to you at 120 bucks. Nvidia is going to charge you through the nose, giving you less quality and more money. I don't know why everybody's up the butt about AV1 encoding. I know Denver's got a good use case for it, but outside of him, or like people that want to do really high quality 4K Blu-ray rips or something, in reality, as far as compression goes, from what I've read, is not much better than H.265. I think you get maybe a slightly smaller file size, but you shouldn't be using GPU encoding anyway for that sort of stuff. You want to use CPU because you get an even smaller file size with higher quality. So I really don't understand all of this AV1 stuff. It makes little sense to me. And single PC stream setups, I kind of get that, but just buy like a i3, 10100 or something on like a $50 motherboard and just make that the stream machine, and then you don't have to worry about it. If Intel comes up with something that equals the RTX 4090, they won't. No, we've already mathed out where Intel's going to be. Battle Mage will be 4070 Ti-ish level. I have a feeling it'll probably be like, depending on their drivers. If they get their drivers more consistent at the higher end of the spectrum, but looking at things right now, for example, the A770 is a 3060 to 3070 Ti card. It spans that entire range. It will beat the pants off of this in certain games, which is amazing. It's just, it doesn't happen all the time. Now, if they scale to the higher end of that spectrum, then you're looking at probably a 4080 level card. If they stay kind of in the middle of the road where they kind of are now, 4070 Ti-ish level card. And on the lower side, which I'm hoping they'll iron out the lower side, then you're looking at like a 4070 level card. So if you have a 4070 to 4080 level card, where it depends on what game you're running, it'll bounce back and forth. People will just say it's basically a 4070 Ti. And that's based off of if they double the GPU. That's around where it'll land. So I expect them to hit that. It'll be 256-bit, 16 gigs. And let's say if it is a 4070 Ti level, I have a feeling it'll be $499, maybe $549, somewhere in there. I think it'll be less than $600, and that'll make it very appealing. The trouble is it's coming too late. Like, that's something they really need to launch this fall for the holidays. If they can get it out this fall, I think that'd be very successful for them, and that would get them a lot of market share. Whether that's possible or not, who knows? But that's where Intel is going to land. Probably Q1 next year. I have a feeling they're going to miss the holidays, which is going to be the big boat for them. Don saying you can buy AMD for almost the same price with less features, or you can be a big boy and pay a premium for the card with full features. That's effectively the situation. Yes. I mean, if AMD was offering significantly lower prices, and by significant, I've said it before, half would be significant. Even 33% lower, that'd be pretty good. So I'd say anywhere from about 30 to 50% cheaper. Then it just comes down to, do you need the features? And if you're like, I'm not going to use most of that, like you might even forego some features that you would like because the price discount would be so steep. But it just seems like that's not a sustainable model for AMD. And the real trouble is, and we've talked about it on Techonomics, they don't have any defining features for their stuff. Now, it seems like they're going to try to integrate their CPUs with their GPUs. It's not really going to work because that means that they have to offer the best value CPUs forever as well, or at least close to it, which they're really not in terms of pricing. They're more energy efficient and they do have their benefits. But let's say AMD comes out with another FX series, right? Let's say Zen 5 is only 15% faster. It's basically the X3D chip that we have now. That's not great. And then if Intel comes out with something 3 to 6 months later that's 30% faster than their Rocket Lake refresh, which they're already saying is going to be 20% or 10% faster. But let's just say it's 30% faster than just straight up Rocket Lake, or even 20% faster than that. Then you're looking at something that's even faster. And then if they charge lower prices per core, which Intel's currently doing, like the AMD model just doesn't make sense. They need to make something that the GPU by itself has features that you can only get with a Radeon graphics card. And without that, you cannot compete with Nvidia. It's impossible. Nvidia has a plethora of features that AMD just can't do. AMD does play catch up on a lot of the features that people like, which is good. So at least they're not falling further behind, but they're not gaining any ground. The AMD card literally needs to be in the conversation. You can only do X, Y, or Z on an AMD card. That's why you buy an AMD card. This forces super high-end enthusiast gamers to buy both the flagship Nvidia and flagship AMD card if they want to have the full feature set. Honestly, that's the only thing that they can do to be a true competitor with Nvidia. Same thing with Intel. Intel will need to either be unbelievably cheaper, which is the route that they're going right now, or in the future, let's say they do have competing products, something that's similar in performance, that'd be cool. They're going to need to have exclusive features that only run on Intel or run better on Intel or something. Like if Intel comes out and let's say their ray tracing is twice as good as Nvidia's, that's a big feature. So you can override Nvidia's features, but you'd have to be substantially better at doing the thing that Nvidia designed. Doesn't really seem possible. It seems much easier to just do a new thing. That's really cool that people would like. And what'd be really funny is if each company kind of continue, like let's say they all innovate, you may need an AMD, an Nvidia, and an Intel top-end GPU in your system to get the best experience at all times. For the companies, that's their best option because then they're selling cards to everybody. And then for people that don't have the money, they'll have to pick and choose which features are most important to them. Might harden the hearts of fanboys out there. It's like, I love my AMD features or my Nvidia features or my Intel features or whatever, right? But I think the most of the community is already there. So anyways, those are just my thoughts. If they want to compete, they have to compete. Chris, are you anti-Asus now? Oh, that's a good one to talk about. After the whole GN thing. No, I'm actually pro-Asus right now. So I don't care that Asus is a shitty company. Let's be honest, they're all shitty companies. That's not news. They got called out, they backtracked, whatever. What you want to do is, because right now Asus's brand is hurt. If you're in the market for anything, go find some Asus deals and buy it. While everybody else is boycotting and not buying them, Asus is going to drop prices hard. You, as the individual who does not care about brands, you take advantage of this situation and save yourself a boatload of money. For example, I got a, the Z690G Strix, the best LGA 1700 MATX motherboard coming in. I got that with the 12700KF. That one actually did arrive. I have that upstairs. I effectively got a $300 Asus board for $100 because of the whole situation. All the Asus boards, when you comboed them up with the 12700KF, were way cheaper. Like they were knocking like $200 off. Like I said, of $300 boards if you comboed those up. Take advantage of that. Like I wouldn't buy the AM5 ones, but I don't really recommend AM5 anyway, unless you just don't want to faff around and you want the X3D chip. In which case, just buy a cheapo board from anybody and it should be all right. But make sure you have the latest BIOS and all the rest of that. But for the most part, I don't recommend AM5 for the vast majority of people. It's too expensive. The only chip worth buying is $450. That's the expensive part. RAM's not too bad. And then, of course, the motherboards are halfway reasonable. But the only CPU worth buying, like I said, it's $450. I got for $350, I got the Z690 board, which is DDR5. It's an 8-layer board, by the way. So, like, it's not a crappy board. It's a good board. And then the 12700KF. It's $100 less for the CPU and the motherboard. And it's a decent motherboard. Which is why the 12700KF is linked in the video description down below. As right now, that's the best CPU to buy. Asus just got caught this time. Yeah, I mean, you know, these guys do crappy stuff all the time. They get caught occasionally, then they backtrack. That's when you buy their stuff, because they're going to be hurting for sales. Let the rest of the world boycott. You save some money off of the work of other people. Take advantage of your, you know, for yourself. Look out for yourself. Don't worry about the brand. Forrest saying he's on the 3070 8 gig, which is the only one. As far as I know, they didn't come out with a 16 gig version until at least the 5070 16 gig. With the way they're going, it might be 24 gigs. Next gen is going to be a big one. Next gen, you're going to get the double VRAM. That's Nvidia's cadence. New node. They have to cut costs as much as humanly possible, so they're going to give you nothing. You're going to pay through the nose. You're going to get small as AF dies. Like, when they move to a new node, that's when you don't really want to buy, but it's also when they get the good performance bump. And then the following generation, it's basically going to be the same node again, maybe tweaked, maybe slightly different, whatever. You're not going to get as much of a performance bump. However, they go ahead and that's when they either bump up the memory and all the rest of that. The only time that this was the exception was with Pascal, but Maxwell was supposed to already be on TSMC 16 nanometer, so they kind of already pushed that back, and I'm sure they got discounts because TSMC missed the window on that one, and Nvidia had already paid them. It was a long time ago. I don't really remember, but I do know that it was supposed to be Maxwell on 16 nanometer at TSMC. So it's likely that was a much cheaper node than, you know, what we currently have now. So, I mean, obviously it was cheaper, but I mean, I think they got a discount on it because TSMC screwed up. AI needs GPUs. It's the new crypto, hence Nvidia grabbing more silicon. Don't care. Price, give me all of it now. Well, I mean, that's part of it. You know, if there's demand for the products at high prices, you're an idiot not to sell at the high prices. Now, the real issue is Nvidia is really the only game in town for consumer gaming graphics cards. Yeah, there's AMD. They're an option. People don't want that option. So Nvidia has the vast majority of the market, and they're just leaving this giant hole. Because it's like, well, if you're not going to be selling graphics cards at prices people actually care about, then who will? And then everybody looks over to AMD, and they're like, no, we're charging what Nvidia's charging. And then you go, well, that's useless. And then Intel, rightly so, they keep cutting down the price of their A750, which is the slightly defective die, which costs them less to produce. It has the 8 gigs of RAM. It's smart that that's the one that they keep cutting down. So they're looking halfway attractive. Once again, the performance swing is a little too big for a lot of people right now. And if you play a lot of older games or off the beaten path sort of stuff, it's not really recommended at this point in time. But for a lot of people, it is a fairly good option, and they're doing what they can do. So, but they're not able to fill that hole. Nobody can fill the Nvidia-sized hole that Nvidia is creating. So the ultimate choice presented to you as the potential customer is you either go along to get along, or you just buy old stuff. You know, let other people pay the new prices and gets ripped off, and then you buy it off of them for pennies on the dollar. I recommend going route number 2. That's the route that I'm going. I'm very impressed with the 2080 Ti and its performance tier. Until the 50 series launches, that's the GPU I'm going to use for the channel. And then when the 50 series launches, we're going to take a look at 3090s and 3090 Ti's. We're going to stay 2 generations back, and with the flagship cards, like those, they have the high memory bandwidth. They have enough VRAM. You really don't give up much. You lose out on a couple of features here and there, which I don't typically recommend using anyway, because you could just brute force a better experience, because it's still a high-end card. This also ties into if you tune and overclock your system, including the graphics card. On the high-end stuff, you can get significantly better performance. Because, well, I guess on Ampere, there's probably not a whole lot you can do, because they were already pushed so far in terms of power. But like this guy right here, 250 watt card, get out of here. Get out of here. You throw 320 watts in there, you almost have a 320 watt 3080 level card. Just do that. Goal, thank you for the 25 pesos. He says Intel 14th, 15 gen, 6 core i3, yay or nay? I doubt it. I doubt it. Probably 8 P cores and then a bunch of E cores. I think they might go up to 10. I do see the i7 and the i9 splitting, and they might do 10 P cores. But we'll see. We'll see what they do. But I think that they're just going to keep adding E cores, and to bring their margins up, they're just going to, with the node process advantages and cheap, you know, as over time as the node gets cheaper, they're basically going to do what they need to do to shrink it down, make the chips cheaper to produce, and then they will continue to sell basically the same core counts. AMD's doing the exact same thing. You're only getting 16 cores from AMD next gen. Intel's already at 24 cores. If Intel goes to 10P and 32 E cores, then AMD's not even in contention with multi-thread anymore. 16 core Zen 5 wouldn't be able to touch a 10P core and 32 E core for workloads. No, goal. Sorry, I just saw my donation get lost. Now, I was just kind of going on a rant there. Happens sometimes. I tried getting Paul on today. I'm thinking he's doing his own video. I wanted to do this on Techonomics because, you know, I wanted kind of the back and forth, but he seemed busy. Uh, 2080 Ti is quite a bit faster than 3070. Yeah. Yeah. What's the gap between the 3070 Ti and the 3080 at stock? I actually don't know. Let me see, because I have a feeling the 3080 Ti is probably more of a 6800 level card, because I think that's faster than the 30. It's faster than the 3070 Ti. I'll give you that one. This is also the reason why you want to buy flagships, because they'll allow much higher power limits than the lower end stuff to keep things in check, and to make sure like you can't buy a 4060 Ti and make it faster than a 4070. Is they're going to power limit the balls out of it. On the flagship, the top end chips, they don't care. You want to draw 500 watts to gain 50% faster? Well, as long as you can keep it cool, it's your call. that's the other reason, on top of the memory bandwidth, the higher memory capacity that naturally comes with flagships and things of that nature. All right, so let's do 3070 Ti. I'm just doing tech power up. Let me get you guys over here so you guys can see this too. They're good for a ballpark number, but we're talking about such small percentages. I don't think ballpark is going to be accurate enough. But they're saying the 6800 is 3% faster. So the 2080 Ti, I would say, is probably about 10% faster than this. Probably right in between here and here. So if this is accurate, just right in between. So yeah, a little faster than this, a little slower than a 6800 XT. And that's at 320 watts, which will match the 3080 in power. Because you have to remember, here, let me pull this up. For you guys that are like, that's not possible. Not only is it possible and true, and verifiably so. Here, let's take a look. So here's the 3080. Where are we? Looking for the SM count, boys. There it is. SMs. 68 SMs. I hate how it's not always in the same. 68 SMs. It's the exact same count, and they both run at the exact same clock speed. So you do the math. It's just the architectural changes. Now in ray tracing, the 3080 will beat the pants off of this. But we're getting to the point now where I'd say these are 1080p ray tracing cards. I don't see anybody wanting to buy a card like this for 1080p. So just do 1440p, no ray tracing. These guys are both monsters. So, yeah. That's the reason why they're basically the same. They run at the same clock speeds and they have the same SM count. The only advantage is the minuscule IPC that Ampere got. That's it. Guys, back. By the way, there's 2080 Ti eBay links down below if you want to go pick one up. Like I said, this one was $325, which, by the way, this is the faster of the two. And I was kind of wondering if the dual fan EVGA was going to work. I tried getting a For the Win 3 again. The first one that I had, once you hit like 68 degrees Celsius, it just 100%ed the fans and there was no way to fix it. So I'm like, that's unusable. It's just way too loud. This one right here, I was just wondering if it'd be able to keep it cool, you know, at the 320 watts. It's got no problems. This is the triple slot. So it's a big fat boy card, but it's not that huge and it keeps it perfectly cool. So that's a good option. You don't have to buy like the super flagship one. It allows you to push the power slider all the way to the right, and you get the same amount of power as you can out of the For the Win 3. Now, if you're going to water cool or something like that, it's also a good way to go. So, figured I'd give you guys the heads up on that. Once again, affiliate links down below if you did want to pick one of those up. It's less than $350, basically a 3080. Hello's asking, okay, well, what is an SM? That is the shader core, like how many shader cores there are. So when you have 68 SMs in comparison to 68 SMs, you have the exact same amount of GPU cores. Now, sometimes they'll change the way the shader cores operate, which they did. Ampere can, the shader cores can either do FP32 or one of them can do Vertex. Basically, they theoretically doubled their FP32 performance. In real world performance, it leads to like a 5%, maybe 10% gain, gen over gen, which means if you have, in this case, 68 SMs of Turing versus 68 SMs of, I guess you could say it's like core count, like AMD versus Intel. Let's get rid of E cores. 6 core versus 6 core, right? And then they're both clocked the same. Then it just comes down to IPC. Which core is faster. We know that Ampere is a little bit higher on the IPC. That's literally the only difference between the 3080 and the 2080 Ti. That and G6X. I think that makes up for the memory bandwidth deficit. This has the higher bus width, and the 3080 10 gig anyway has the faster RAM. Now, if you go with a 3080 12 gig, that one has more SMs and the higher memory bandwidth. That one will stretch further away from the 2080 Ti, but I would still call them the same class of GPU. There's not 30% between them. What do you think the margins are on 4060 Ti at 500? Like 50%? No, they're 60 to 70%. Now, we do know that Nvidia takes a bigger hit on their lower end stuff, but overall, it's probably somewhere between 50, 60% at the low end. But I just assume that they're making 60, 65% on everything. I'd say it's whatever margin they were making on this, to be perfectly honest. Oh, Pony! There we go. Somebody's getting competitive. Thank you, buddy. He says, I'm at work. Managed to catch a stream. I'll rewatch later. Need to stay competitive. Thank you so much, buddy. You mad lad. Thought you had today off. I was actually wondering where you were at. I didn't see you in the chat. But, all right, you have fun at work. Yeah, so thanks for the support. So, anyways, Pony is now competitive, so whatever he says happens to be true. And that's what we're going to do for the rest of the stream. Oh, I guess today's Thursday. Sorry, buddy. Yeah, I'm getting my days mixed up because I usually do Friday. So I'll see you tomorrow. Like I said, tomorrow's going to be the fun one. So if you missed the beginning of the stream here, we're going to be taking on Jay with his i7 7700 or 4770K and his RTX 2080 Ti, which is kind of the reason why this conversation about the 2080 Ti came up. I'm just so blown away by the performance, even with like the more basic one. Like I said, I had a For the Win 3. It's a big fat GPU. It's a big boy GPU. So I wasn't surprised that that thing was insane. But this guy does the exact same thing. In fact, the memory on this one's better. So I got an even higher overclock there. But anyways, we're going to be taking on Jay. He put up some numbers a few weeks ago. It looked like fun. I just wanted to go ahead and show Jay and the whole community, if you spend a little bit more time with your PC, you can get significantly more performance. So he's basically showing worst case scenarios. He used an FE, Founders Edition 2080 Ti. You don't buy Founders Editions. The power limits are way too low most of the time. I don't know if they changed that on the 30 or 40 series. I know the 20 series is way too low. Always go with a quality AIB who has the highest power limits possible. Of course, you can find ways around that if you want to, but it's just easier to buy the thing that does what you need straight out of the box. So he did that, and then he was using 16 gigabytes, which we also have under the RAM fan. But he was using DDR3 1600 C11s. That's what one of you guys said. That's worse than what like the mainstream people used at the time. So it was absolutely terrible. So he was completely crippling his system. And in terms of the overclocking, he just used the OC Genie, which is like, just tell your motherboard to overclock for you, which gave him an extra 100 megahertz. That's not how you set up a system. So I just felt like, well, these are relatively cheap parts. Let's go ahead and compete. Turns out I ended up breaking the Time Spy world record with this particular combination when I was just testing it out. I did not run the Time Spy Extreme one. I just ran the regular Time Spy. I actually missed it by like 50 points. I'm like, all right, we'll push just a little bit harder to get it. So it really just kind of goes to show if you put a little effort in, how much faster you can get. So we're basically going to... I'm more competing with the numbers he put up for his 12900K. That's more where I'm interested, because it'd be funny if I could beat his same setup with a 12900K with the 4770K. And it just goes to demonstrate to you guys what you can do if you just put in a little work. Took me 3 hours of tuning and validation. And then, of course, overnight for complete validation. Spend a little time, you can get some crazy stuff. And the fact that this still plays modern games, even these crappy optimized games, it'll still play most of them. Preston, thank you for the 5 spot. He said, Forbin is always competitive. Are you ready to say screw the current gen GPUs buy used or last gen? I'm telling you what to buy. This is the GPU to get, unless you need 4K 120. So if you have an OLED and you want the 4K 120, I would go with the 6950 XT. You can get those brand new. They're reasonably priced. I've been saying that forever. I'm like, there's no beating that card in terms of performance and price. At $600, that thing's a freaking monster. Now, if you don't want to spend that much money, this guy's going to get you really close in performance. I'd say within 20%. Still has 11 gigs, has higher memory bandwidth, but and you know, you can get this for $300 to $400 depending on which model you want to get. Some of the higher end models do cost more. The For the Win 3s are like $500. Don't do it. It's part of the reason why I wanted to mention that. Get the cheaper one. Works fine. Stays perfectly cool. I don't think I've ever seen 75 degrees under like torture test. So it's usually under 70. So it's pretty darn good. Pony, thank you for the 5 spot. He says, I'll ship you that RAM tomorrow. Awesome. Thanks, buddy. Yeah, so if you guys don't know, My Little Pony's our resident XOC guy, and he's got RAM that does like really crazy things. And I think we'll do, I don't know, moving into the future, we might still just test out some old stuff and have fun. You know, like this stuff's so cheap, you guys can go out and buy it yourself and just test it and faff around. If you want to play with hardware, it'd be the way to go. Will we get a 20-30, 30-30, or a 40-30? I honestly don't know. Look at the laptop market. How small do those chips get? And if there's like a spot for one, then the answer is yes. I want to learn how to boost my i7 4770K. Cool. Well, we'll go over that tomorrow. Jay's 2 cents even thinks the 4060 Ti will be a good card. Yeah, I was kind of alluding to that earlier. He's one of the ones that's pretty positive on it. Like I said, it's not... Here's the thing. It's not a bad card. Like, a lot of people want to be up in arms with pitchforks. It's not. It's just not a good card. I wouldn't even say it's a meh card. It's literally the same thing. This isn't the first time in history that you get the exact same performance for the exact same price. Now, unlike the 2080, when that launched, it was slower sometimes than the 1080 Ti. It cost more than the 1080 Ti, and you got less VRAM than the 1080 Ti. That was just a really, really, really bad look. In this case, I think it'll be a little faster at 1080p. It might be decently faster. 1440p. I'm interested to see if it can even hold its own there. It will get owned at 4K, as long as reviewers don't run Ultra on a card that's not designed for Ultra. These cards are high preset at best, no ray tracing ever level cards. But I guarantee you're going to have these clowns going, Ultra with ray tracing at 4K, it can't do it. It's like, no duh. You know, that's what you buy 4090s for. That's why that card exists. Jonerd Games is just like, hashtag Chris. Oh, what is Chris talking about? The 2080 Ti. It's pretty much the best graphics card to buy for the money. If you're willing to buy used. And if you want to go new, you get the 6950 XT if you want that performance tier. And you know, if you're wanting the cheapest best, it's the RX 6600. Just go buy one of those 180-ish bucks on the secondhand market, or spend the $40, get one new for about $220. There's just no beating those. Those are the GPUs to buy. Those and then the 4090, of course. If you buy anything but the 4080 and 4090 from Nvidia, you'll end up crying your eyes out in 3 to 4 months. I mean, I doubt that. I mean, the 4070s are going to be just fine for quite a while. Same thing, same price is bad in my book, for tech at least. I mean, that's subjective, but it's not worse. We've literally gotten worse before. That's why I said the 2080, RTX 2080, as an example. It was literally worse for more money. It's so it's not that bad. I said the 60 Ti 8 gig versus 16 gig should answer the RAM question once and for all. Well, you can just go get a 2060 6 gig and a 12 gig. You can do that right now if you wanted to. Here's the thing. if you're going to run ultra ray tracing, which if you ever listen to anybody who's really pushing this whole VRAM narrative, that's what they're always saying. You have to, with ultra, like they'll always preface with ultra and or ray tracing as well. Well, these cards aren't ultra ray tracing cards. That's, you know, like your $700, $800, $1,000, $1,600 range, right? 700 plus range. Then you talk about ultra settings and ray tracing. That's kind of pretty much always been the case. Your $500, like your 3070 card, that was like a 1080p ultra ray tracing card. Nobody was buying a 3070 for 1080p ultra ray tracing, or they shouldn't have been. Should have been buying it for 1440p high, because it would absolutely do that, no problem. Still can do that to this day, no problem. If a game comes out with just way too high a texture pack, just drop it to medium, leave everything else on high, just drop your textures one notch, and boom, you're done. It's really not a problem. But as far as I can tell, 8 gigabyte cards can run every game on high, no problem. So that's just my thoughts. And this whole UE5 boogeyman, the perfect example is Fortnite is a game that uses UE5 and it scales all the way down to like a 1060. So if a UE5 game does not run on reasonable graphics cards, which I would say, like, you know, what was it? RX 5700 or like a 2060 Super or better, that's on the developer. Because it's not the engine that doesn't allow for it. It's them just not making sure the thing runs properly. Which also means that the game won't run on an Xbox Series S. Because a 2060 Super and a 5700 non-XT from Radeon will absolutely murder the Xbox Series S in terms of graphics performance. So stop worrying about the boogeyman. If somebody wants to make a game that doesn't run on reasonable hardware, it's not going to sell well. And the only way that the game's going to be any sort of success is if it's somehow the best game ever. Like, people love playing it for a long time. Might sell halfway decent because people like to see their hardware fall off a cliff as a justification to spend more money. Insert Crysis here. What was nice about Crysis was it was actually a good game and did something different. And that's part of the reason why that did reasonably well in sales. It was actually a good game plus the graphics. If it's just graphics, it won't sell well. And then that developer's going to learn, oh, graphics does not sell games. It has to be a good game. Now, if somebody can marry the two and deliver a new gaming experience, that's fantastic and great. It still won't sell very well if it doesn't run on modest hardware. Just is what it is. So you can't require like a 6800 XT or an RTX, 3090 level graphics card and expect to make money. You can release the game, but you're not going to sell much. So you need to leave that alone. Stop worrying about things that don't exist yet. He says, this is from Joseph. He's saying, hey, love the old i7 content. Later piece from Australia. Yeah, man, it's a lot of fun. Tomorrow's going to be a blast. I have way more fun with this than worrying about like 4060s and 4060 Ti's. Because it's just not something that I personally would recommend. You're better off for the same money, just buy this thing. Buy one of these. Or one of these. You can get the 3060 Ti for much cheaper. At least here in the US. Like I said, around the world might be a little different. A770 16 gigs sold out everywhere. Is it? Jump online. Let's go shopping, boys. Let's see if we can find one. Maybe I should scalp mine. Put it towards the fund for next month's build. So yeah, what I'm going to do every month is we're just going to build a new PC with some old stuff. So if you guys do want to mess around and compete, you can donate the $100 and then you're competing, or you can compete directly by building the system. Next month, we're going to do a Ryzen 2600. Those are very, very cheap. It's like $45. And we're going to see what we can do with one of those guys. The 2080 Ti is what we're going to use throughout the rest of the year. So if you go out and spend the money on one of these, you want to compete every month, we're not changing the graphics card. This will be the graphics card for this year. And then, like I said, next year, we'll go up to the... I really think I'm just going to say the hell with it, go with the 3090 Ti, but you can do a 3090 or a 3080 12 gig, even a 3080 if you wanted to. I'd say a 3080 12 gig probably do it. But yeah, so next year we'll do that, and then we'll keep competing, and we'll keep having fun. So anyways, let's see, what's Newegg? Oh, this is eBay. What am I doing? My head's on competing. I'm like 2060. I'm like, I was going that route. Because I'm excited. This one's already done. I'm going to compete with Jay on this one. But I'm excited for the next one. Why am I on computer systems? Sorry, guys. I'm just kind of out of it. GPUs. Let's go. All right. A770. Well, there's the 8 gig back order. Oh, this one's out too, huh? That's pretty interesting. The Bifrost, these were, what, 340 the other day? Really thinking about it, but for my use case, I can't use this. I have to go with Nvidia because occasionally I'll try to run something, and if it doesn't run, it pisses me off so bad. With the Nvidia cards, everything pretty much works. But at 340, I was really debating on it just because. Like, that's a pretty good deal. But you can order one, I guess. It's on back order, so you have to give them your money, and then it'll show up eventually. I guess that means that Newegg has their order in. Let's check eBay. Check eBay. What are these things selling for? Let's see if they're getting scalped. Intel Arc A770, 16 gigabyte. Wow, there's like none of them on here. Parts only. Why wouldn't you just... You could buy this one, and it's still under warranty, unless they did something stupid to it. So, read that. But, yeah, as long as they didn't crack the seal, this is under warranty. Hasn't been out that long. So, there you go. That's the deal. A770, 180 bucks. I got eBay affiliate links down below. Go ahead and use that. 275 open box. Yeah, there you go. You got that one. Still, I don't know why. Like... Anyway, but then you got 377, then they're starting to go up. Brand new. Yep, they're starting to get scalped, boys. Arc's getting scalped. But you have a couple of options that are halfway reasonable right now. Oh, man. This whole VRAM thing, it's hilarious. But you can see the effects of it. This is the whole reason why, like, I'm really harping on it with you guys. It's like, it does not matter. If you need more VRAM, meaning like you're like, I want ray tracing and I want ultra textures and I want all that stuff, well, congratulations, you're a 4090 buyer. Just go buy the 4090. Well, I don't want to spend that much. Well, then you need to sacrifice ultra and ray tracing. Like you gotta give somewhere. You could go with like the 7900 XTX, I suppose, but then once again, you're sacrificing if you do that. So it's either lower your demands or spend the money. That's really kind of the options. But it's really nuts that people are just going crazy over this. And it really shows how much of a frenzy some of these YouTubers can do with, like, nothing. Chris, can you put A770 Tech Power Up also on the screen? Yeah, I can pull that up. Bloop, 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 bloop. Play capture. Where would they? There it is. Not sure what you're looking for here. Memory bandwidth on this is pretty good though. It's faster than the 3070. There we go. Now 512 gigabytes per second versus 448. So it's actually a card that can have a very good longevity. It's also on TSMC 6 nanometer. It's 400 millimeters squared. I have a feeling that this card could do really well into the future. Arc Fine Wine. Well, that's a given. I mean, the state of the drivers where they were at launch, there was nowhere to go but up. They're at least good now. Like, I would sell an Arc card in a pre-built because they're good enough. For the average gamer, it's perfectly fine. For somebody with my unique use cases, not so much. Not yet, anyway. But I keep an eye on it. That's why I put it in my main system. My main system I don't really game on, but I could test games regularly and just see, does this work now? Does this work now? You know, check it all out. You want to see the TMUs and ROPs? There you go, 256 and 128. 16x lanes too. Well, this is a high-end card. I don't know what. This is 406 millimeters squared on TSMC 6 nanometer. This is more advanced than RDNA 2 and way more advanced than Ampere in terms of process technology. It's only the current gen stuff that is more advanced than this. This is decidedly a last gen level card, but yeah, there's a lot of good here. And I guess it's kind of a good thing that people are starting to figure it out. The downside is the cooler. It looks awesome, which when I had it in the system, everybody's like, oh, that looks amazing. Yeah, it looks awesome. But why don't you show the front? I wish I could show you guys the top here. There's not enough room for the air to get through. This needs to be a 2.5 slot card. This needs to be thicker, and they need to remove some of the grill and stuff on the side so air can get out easier. But other than that, like looks-wise, it's great, but just make the cards fatter. 2.5, 3 slots. Just do it, and give me 2 8-pins, and let me push power up to 375 watts. But other than that, it's pretty cool. Pretty good stuff. AK Porn have a hard time on the RK770. I don't know, Shadow Fox. I don't know. A770 looks dirt cheap. Excellent. Entry level 1080p gaming card. Well, it's actually a, yeah, it's because you're not going to be ray tracing on this level either. It's really a 1440p level card, depending on the game. Because, like I said, it's faster than an overclocked one of these, which is already faster than a 3070. So, I believe it was The Witcher 3. Let me see if I can pull it up. But there was one game where, when I tested the A770, it was just way too fast. It was way too fast, where I was just like, what? Now, if all games run this way, forget about it. It might actually be a 2080 Ti level competitor at that point, which is, you know, a 6800 level competitor. All right. Sorry, guys, I'm checking my benchmark stuff. Budget CPUs, no. U20, probably this one. In-game average. All right, let me get you guys over. Yeah, we don't want the 10-game average. Well, I guess we could start there. Let me just do all of them. We'll just go through. Open. All right, so these were done a couple months ago. Obviously, drivers are probably a bit better now. But here's Cyberpunk. You can see the A770, not so much. Gotham Knights, not so much. God of War, not so much. By the way, this is at stock and these are overclocked, so take that for what it is. All right, Call of Duty. Well, now we're not too terribly far off, right? It's at least in the running. Plague Tale, not so much. Spider-Man, it's right in the running. Tiny Tina, from here to here is not so much. But I'd say that these are kind of in the running. Total War Warhammer. Once again, definitely in the running here, and then not so much. So it's at least catching up sometimes. And then, where was it? Then you have this guy right here at 1440p, but it was this one right here at 1080p where it beats these two. Remember, these are overclocked. This is stock. This shows what is technically possible with the hardware. Why does it do so well here? Don't know, but it does. Probably the memory bandwidth being superior. That'd be my guess, because this game loves both CPU memory bandwidth, low latency CPU memory, and GPU memory bandwidth. Like, that's just what this game loves. But yeah, I just remember seeing that and I was like, what? So if they can get to this level where they're beating an overclocked 3060 Ti, which is already faster than a 3070, that means this right here is close to a 3070 Ti out of the box. Yeah, if you can get that level of performance out of your $300 GPU, let's say a year from now, I think you're going to be very, very happy. Whether that's going to happen or not, can't say, but that'd be really good. So let's get on back over here and see what you guys are saying. Thought about buying an A380 as an AV1 encoder. There you go. To use with my 3090, but I decided because it would lower my PCIe lanes to 8x, just bought a 4090, sold my 3090 and called it a day. There you go. That's another option. Plus the performance uplift is quite ginormous. Folks saying it's not about FPS anymore. It's all about AI compute. For what? Not for the end user, it's not. End user doesn't care about AI nor compute. None of that is a big deal for us at this point. And when it is, don't worry, there'll be something that'll be able to do it. A770 is pretty good in Hogwarts from what I've seen. Yeah, it does decently well in there. If I remember correctly, let me see. I don't know if I did the A770 on Hogwarts. Maybe I did. Sorry, so many silly things to go through. Yes. All right, so did I do Hogwarts A770? I did. Okay, so this one, A770 is 52 on the 1% low. 2080 Ti is 73. The 3060 Ti is 59, so it's not too far behind the 3060 Ti overclock. So probably about 3060 Ti stock. 6700 XT did really well on this one at 72. This is with the high preset. Now, what's funny is with the AMD cards, they do really well, like in Hogwarts, did really, really good until you run out of cache, until you run out of that L3 cache. Once I turned ray tracing on, it was, I know I've said this before, but it's actually hilarious to see the L3 cache get filled and how the GPU tries to cope. Because in the future, this is what's going to happen in more and more games when you overload the VRAM, right? So in Hogwarts, when you turn it on, it'll run fine and kind of does its thing, right? And then you just see the frame time graph just stair step and your frame rate drop and drop and drop and drop, and then it spikes back up. And then it just drops and drops and drops and drops because it basically just unloads everything and reloads the cache from scratch is how it operates. And I was just really cracking up. I'm like, oh, so that's what you do when you run out of juice. I want ChatGPT to run on 512 Tensor Core, folks. Okay. Tensor cores can directly equate to ray tracing FPS. Once again, if you're ray tracing, you buy a 4090. Just stop dicking around and buy it, or get over ray tracing. What's more important to you, $1,600 or ray tracing? This is the conundrum for you. Well, I want to find a middle ground. Okay, well, that's fine. You're going to faff around, and you're not going to have the best ray tracing experience. You have to compromise. That's why I just say don't bother with it. If you don't want to spend $1,600, don't bother with ray tracing. Turn it off, and then you can buy much cheaper graphics cards. In Hogwarts, the textures will look ugly as heck when you run out of VRAM. I don't know. Like I said, I run it at high, so not really a big deal. 8 gig cards, no problems with the textures. We just overloaded the cache with ray tracing. Like I said, it was just hilarious. I wish I had it on camera. I guess I could always just try to recreate it, but they might have fixed it with a patch. But I was just like, what the heck is going on here? Because it would happen at the same interval every time. It was just stair step down, jump up, stair step down, and jump up. I was like, it has to be the cache running out because the GPU just doesn't have enough memory bandwidth. So that's why part of me is like, these hacks and cheats to get around lack of memory bandwidth. I already see the future of how this is going to go. You're better off just getting, from the jump, at least a 256-bit card. I can't really see going any lower than that, making any sense. Now that you can buy really high-end previous-gen graphics cards, that'll offer that to you. Now, if you're on like an extreme budget, I get it. You know, you have to buy a cheaper card. But, you know, like an RX 6600 is going to do just fine, but you have to understand that card is not going to last very long. You'll have to upgrade, what, every 2 years, maybe every 4 years at least. Whereas if you get, let's say you buy the 4090 today, you're not going to need to upgrade for at least 3 to 4 generations of GPUs. Unless you're like, I want the 4K 120 locked all the time sort of thing. But if you're okay with fiddling with settings and going down, the graphics card itself will still run games 10 years from now. Guarantee it. It'll still run games 10 years from now. Might just be at low settings, but they'll still look better than the games that are out today at Ultra. So do you really care? That's you, Chris. Not all of us play high in every game. Yeah, that's fair. That's why I said, if you want the best, go buy the best. Why are you sitting here complaining? Why do you care about graphics cards? Whatever the best graphics card is, go buy it. You want everything maxed out? Buy the thing that's designed for that and stop worrying about it. If you're like, well, I want 1440p 60 with ray tracing and this and that, then you're getting kind of nuanced. Then you don't need a 4090, right? So then you just find the card that'll be able to do the 1440p with the ray tracings and all of that. That'll do the job, and then you just go buy it. I just don't see what the problem is here. A lot of people play CS 1.6 still. Yeah, well, that's because it's a better game. I tried CSGO. It's terrible. Source was okay for a while, but then they threw some patches in there, and they made that terrible. And then I gave Go a shot, and it was pretty bad. Diablo 2. Yeah, Diablo 2. Pretty good. 3080 Ti is perfectly acceptable. 60 hertz ray tracing at 1440p. High, though, and it's got no texture issues. It's ridiculously less expensive. That's a segment that people are pretty attractive. Yeah, I mean, you can go that route. That's another option. That's one area where you don't want the 6950 XT. The 3080 Ti's on the used market are about $600. You can go that route. Yeah. So, I mean, you know, if you have, like, I want something that's not the best, that's what I cater to. If you want the best, you just buy the most expensive, fastest thing that there is. They're just stop whining about it. If you can't afford that, that's fine. That's most people. I don't recommend everybody do that, but if you want the best, go buy the best, and you don't need to be worrying about 4060s, right? Like, it just doesn't matter. Now, if you want the best value, which is usually what I recommend, that's a whole other story. But best value is most frames at, you know, a certain price point. And to get best value, Ultra's got to go out the window. So you have to kind of, as the individual out there watching, you have to figure out where you sit on the spectrum. You know, you can go with more and more and more towards worse value, towards the performance that you want. Objectively, something like the 4060 Ti and 4060, the reason why that these are big in the news, because they're such bad value relative to the used market right now that everybody's like, why do these even exist? And that's really the big question. Also, the fact that these are entry-level cards. So that's really bugging people. I totally agree. Source better than Go. Yeah, Go is the worst of all of them, of the Counter-Strikes. It's the most popular and most profitable for them, but it's still the worst of the 3 iterations. 1000, 1600 to Nvidia, or Get on the short bus. I mean, that's basically how it goes. If you want the best, buy the best. You know, if AMD, let's say the 7900 XTX competed both in ray tracing, feature set, and was $1,000, you know, I'd say go buy that. Well, but it doesn't. It's not the best. It's near the second best. Well, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense unless you're like, I only do 60 hertz. Okay, well then clearly your definition of the best is not the best. Parker's Garage. I wanted the fastest. Yeah, go for it, man. Have at it. Affiliate links are down below. For someone that doesn't already have a 3080 Ti, though, I'd recommend getting the 4070 as around the same performance. No, it doesn't. And it comes with frame gen support to help out with. You don't want to use frame gen or DLSS. So if you want to run ray tracing, the only thing that can't be done is 4K ray tracing. You have to use DLSS. There's just no way around it. But you're better off just buying something that can do it natively. So what can do 1440p ray tracing natively? 4090. So just buy that because you're going to get the better image. Now, once again, if you're like, well, I don't want to spend that kind of money, that's understandable. But then why 1440p ray tracing? Just do 1080p ray tracing. Well, I don't want to do 1080p. See, you have to compromise. If you're not buying the fastest, you have to compromise somewhere. And it's either going to be on price or features or something. So this is something like a lot of people today seem to not understand. They want everything and they want it at like some silly price. Like I want 4090 performance at, which is 1440p ray tracing or 4K 120. That's a 4090. I want that for $500. It's like, well, yeah, that'd be nice. I'd, you know, definitely recommend that if that was a thing, but we're not there yet. Maybe next gen you'll get something along those lines. It's just unreasonable expectations. So, in your opinion, what's the value point? The value point is the max frame rate for the lowest possible price point at high settings, because high, for the most part, is indistinguishable sub 4K than ultra in modern games. And you just don't have a high enough resolution unless you're running 4K for ultra. I understand you have to compromise somewhere. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So all it is pick and choosing your own compromises. Now, I recommend what I perceive to be the best value. Like I said, I do not recommend any DLSS, no upscaling. You run native. Even with ray tracing, you run native. The reason for that is if image quality is important to you, those upscalers kill it. Absolutely kill it. Now, if you're just like, I just want higher frame rate, then things like frame gen, okay, whatever. You're still not going to get the benefits of a higher frame rate using it. You know, all it is interpolation. It doesn't actually make the game run faster. So you actually, you get higher input latency using frame gen. So you technically get a worse gaming experience. You're better off. And this is what really killed DLSS for me. So let's say you're running 4K, just for example, and then you run quality. I believe that drops you down to 1440p. If I'm remembering correctly. I'm fairly certain it does. So if you're running DLSS quality without the frame gen, let's say that gets you from 50 FPS to 70. All right, gets you from, you know, what people would say is unplayable to playable. If you just drop to 1440p and not use DLSS, it'll get you to like 90. You get more performance. And from what I can tell, you get better visual quality in motion as well. So the image quality static, like just sitting there looking at a picture, may look a little bit worse because DLSS is really good with static images, but the actual gameplay, you get superior image quality and higher FPS. So that's why I'm like, I don't recommend doing it. You can do whatever you want, but you're better off just dropping the resolution and letting your display or the GPU just do the standard upscaling by itself. Set both your time preference and your graphic settings lower. Okay. Well, DLSS and FSR depends on the individual person. Well, I just explained to you its negative benefits. Now, if for some reason you don't see it, maybe the motion thing doesn't affect you, then I can see it maybe making sense, but still just try dropping the resolution. Because you're still going to get a higher frame rate. So 1440p on my 4K displays, on my OLED, which is right here. It's a 42-inch display. It's right there. Like, I'm literally touching it right now. So this is a very large display. Looks almost as good as the native 4K. It's not as good. It's a little blurrier, but it looks really darn close. It's almost indistinguishable. So from my experience, it's just better to run this thing at 1440p. I don't even run 4K on this unless I'm running benchmarks, because there's no point. It's a massive waste of resources. But like I said, I'm right up on this thing and I can't see the difference. If you're noticing the differences, either your eyes are significantly better than mine, which when using a smaller display might be possible, but this thing's massive. So like pixel density and all the rest of that does come into play. But it looks great. Looks absolutely great. And you get higher performance. So I'd recommend going that route. Burger's Garage has got a 24-inch 1080p 280 hertz monitor. I prefer high refresh. Yeah, well, there you go. Yeah. And for you, CPU is more important than graphics card because it's 1080p. What you mean, path tracing? Oh, that's next gen. Path tracing's next gen. Heresy. Everyone moaning about DLSS 3 on every new AAA title, therefore it must be good. I mean, I turned it on and I'm just like, blurry mess, whatever, turn it off. Yeah, my frame rate's lower. Lower the resolution. Looks better to me. If the frame rate's the goal. LG's C2 42-inch does not do 4K PC based upscaling. It does its own upscaling because I don't have the GPU doing the upscaling. I have it set to the display doing the upscaling. Good point about DLSS. I don't see around. Even comparing 1080p against 1440p DLSS, it's not always the obvious choice. Yeah, see, here's the thing. You can't compare it unless you're actually looking at it. Because you can't watch YouTube video at those low resolutions and see the difference, because you're going to get visual artifacts from YouTube. You can't look at stills, because that's what DLSS does. That's how they're fooling people. You know, when Digital Foundry will show a still image and go, "Well, look how great it looks." It's like, yeah, who gives a shit? You don't play games as a slideshow. You know, you're actually moving and doing things. That's when it doesn't look good. And basically, the faster the motion the game, the worse DLSS and FSR are. Just the nature of the beast of anything temporal. Even TAA can become a problem if the game doesn't implement it properly. And you're better off running 0 AA on a lot of games because of that. But yeah, I mean, you got to test it for yourself. That's the real problem. And nobody tests for themselves. That's the real issue that I keep running into. I have a 48 LG CX 120. I don't recommend it for most folks, but I use for both business and pleasure, and it makes me happy. 48-inch. I mean, this is pretty big. I adjusted to it a lot faster than I thought I would, honestly. And yes, it is a lot of fun. When you get it's much more immersive than you would think that it would be. Path tracing will become cheaper to use in the future. Okay. Honestly, like, these things just don't matter. Path tracing, okay, when it's a thing and there's games that use it and it's cool and you want to play the game, by that point in time, there's probably gonna be 2 or 3 generation old graphics cards for like $400 or $500 that'll play the game just fine. It's not like these things are just gonna come out of nowhere, where it's like you have to have a 4090 just to play the game. It's like, well, no, you turn the setting off now. If it's a good game, you play it without it. And then in the future, when path tracing becomes a real thing and you have to run it with that, it'll be dirt cheap to be able to do so. It's always been the case. If you want to be on the bleeding edge, that's cool. Just buy the most expensive thing and enjoy all of the bleeding edgedness. It's horrible value, but you get to have everything that you want. You get to run all of the games. You get to look at all of the pretty pictures. I don't recommend that. It's not the route that I recommend, but you are free to do as you please. Any competitive shooters I play on 280 hertz, maybe I'm just crazy, but a 24-inch 1080p monitor high refresh looks just fine for me. 2 feet away from it. Yeah, most people are fine with just about any monitor as long as they can get used to it. As long as the pixel density isn't too bad. Like a 32-inch 1080p, that might not fly for a lot of people. It also depends on the panel type. We talked about this before on Techonomics. It's not just, 1080p 32-inch. IPS looks significantly worse than TN at a larger size. I used to use a 37-inch TN TV, 1080p TV, and that was fine. You couldn't see the pixels. But on a 27-inch IPS display, I can see the pixels. So there's just a lot more to it. Could just be that particular monitor versus that particular monitor, but I've had better experience with TN panels on LCD than anything else. Yeah, the colors aren't as good and all the rest of that, but for motion, it's great. And in terms of like pixel density, I just didn't have as many problems with it as like VA. VA is very easy to see as well. Do you have any opinions on the sudden increase in seemingly decent enough gaming handhelds on the market? Yeah, we talk about it on Techonomics. I think for a lot of people, that's going to become the norm. I think that might actually eventually, once they get smart enough, especially if Microsoft wakes up or Steam. For a lot of people, I think that might even be able to take over your phone. Because I can see a lot of people wanting to carry those around kind of wherever they go. You can already see that kind of with the Switch, but you still need like your silly cell phone. You can combine that into this, and then it also becomes your desktop where you can plug in an external graphics card. I can see it really taking off. There's a lot of growing pains to get there. There has to be a lot of collaboration, like Asus using their proprietary nonsense. Can't do that. Everybody has to have access to the same thing. All docking stations have to work on every model from every manufacturer. Effectively, they need to have a broad-reaching standard that everybody has to follow. You can change, obviously your specs and like certain grips and stuff, but all the accessories and peripherals and that sort of stuff, every single handheld needs to work. From the Steam Deck to the Aya Neo to the Ally, like all of them. And then it just needs to become a universal thing. The main differences will be like screen size, the resolution, refresh rate, basically become the cell phone market. And that could easily completely eliminate desktop PC gaming for the overwhelming majority of people. Yeah, I can see it happening. Goal, thank you for the 25 pesos. He says Path games could be compile. Could be compile. Like mods for non-RTX. Not sure what you're saying. Like, could they be modded in? I'm sure they could be. Yeah. The new thing from Nvidia, the remix, that's path tracing for old games, and that's all modding. Perhaps I'm wrong, and that's why FSR looks good on my C2. My quality could be upscaling. Well, if you don't have GPU upscaling ticked in your box, then your display is doing the upscaling. And the LG monitors have their own AI algorithms that do upscaling far better than a regular monitor. So it's a little difficult for me to kind of be like, yeah, just lower the resolution, blah, blah, blah. The frame rate part is true. The visual quality will depend on your display. The LG OLEDs are all I game on. I got one here and I got one upstairs. That's where I game. So I'm kind of in a little box on that one, but you definitely get higher frame rate just running at the lower resolution instead of DLSS and FSR. And from my experience with those, you just get so much extra motion blur garbage I can't use it, or I don't recommend it. When's Computex? Sometime in June. All right, so I'm going to jump on over to the Discord. I opened up the Q&A because we didn't really have a lot to talk about here today, but we still filled the 2 hours. I was thinking we would, I guess we didn't really talk that much about the 4060 and 4060 Ti because there's not much to say. Not much better than last gen. The 4060 is at least cheaper. So there's that. Cheaper and slightly better. So looks like we got 2 here. That's from Panicapa. And we got, is there any chance that you're going to test E-cores on either a 13600K, 13700K, or a 13900K against either the Skylake CPUs down to their speeds? Well, you can't just run E-cores. You have to run a P-core, so that test is impossible. There has to be at least one P-core on. Suppose you can run, what was it, process lasso or something, but who really cares, honestly? P-cores is what runs your games. E-cores help with shader compiles and stuff like that, which is really cool. So it does assist with the game, but it's more dealing with the stuff that we didn't used to have in games. Really just annoying nonsense. And then we got one from Donnie. He says, just a reminder, people can use DisplayPort to HDMI adapter for 120 hertz. Yes, you could do that as well. So you can get the HDMI, the active adapter, DisplayPort 1.4 to HDMI 2.1 active adapters, and then you can get 4K 120. So I guess that's true, but then it's an extra add. But for me, this is a 1440p card. Just run it at 1440p and it'll absolutely destroy it. Goal saying, I mean, old games could be path trace compiled in mods for non-path trace capable cards. I mean, old games already aren't path traced. So, I mean, technically all cards are path trace capable. It's just they're so slow, we consider them incapable. So, like, if you wanted to run, like, an RX 470 in path tracing, you're free to do so. It's just going to run really bad. You're better off just running the older game in its original form. But yeah, with the remix thing, we should start seeing a lot of really old games path traced. I read somewhere, I guess to do it, you need an RTX card, but it runs on everything. But somebody was saying that it basically requires an RTX card to run those games. I guess we'll see. But I really do think that for Nvidia, that's just another feather in their cap, another reason to buy an RTX card. Because there's going to be a lot of people that want to play older games that look like modern games. Because, you know, the developers aren't going to go back and do a lot of those older DirectX 8 and DirectX 9 games. They're just not going to remaster them. Unless they were, like, the biggest ones. Zen saying they're overpriced. People are better off buying used cards from last gen. Yeah, same performance, save money. Yeah. Same thing. What card is in your system? In my system, I got the A770 in the work system, which I don't really game on. And then I got the 3060 Ti upstairs. And then the 2080 Ti, that'll be for the channel. We'll be doing, like I said, we'll be competing. We're going to be competing. We're going to have fun with the hardware. And I encourage all of you guys to go out and buy it yourself. Do it yourself. If you've never tuned a PC, if you don't know how to tune a PC, it's time to learn. And the best way to do that is buy really, really cheap stuff that if you break it, you don't really care. And that really can't go any lower in price. So once you're done playing with it, sell it off, you'll recover most of your money. So right now, once again, we're using the 4770K, and then we'll do that tomorrow live. We'll go through that one. Next month, we'll be doing the Ryzen 2600. And yeah, so the big expense would be is picking up a 2080 Ti. Like I said, they're sub $400. And this is going to sound really, really bad, but looking at the current prices, if a $320 graphics card is too expensive, if you're like, that, I just can't afford that, you know, that's perfectly acceptable. There are other options like the RX 6600 that make sense, but PC gaming is probably not going to be for you. Not the latest stuff anyway. Older stuff, sure. You can always be a couple of gens behind, and you'll always have options. But if you can't afford a $300 graphics card, you're not buying new graphics cards anymore. I think that's really the sad part that we're finding out about this whole situation. Spook, thank you for the 5. He said, cheers, keep us grounded. Yeah, man. Yeah. It's really kind of a byproduct of just running so many different hardware configurations over the last year that you just kind of know which ones made sense. Like, I really like the 6700 XT at its price point. It's really good. 36 Ti, really, really good. Goal, welcome to basic membership. I thought you're already there, but hey, welcome, buddy. Basically, the $300 to $400 GPU market's really good. You can sometimes get 6800s for like $350, $400. Those are pretty good. Like I said, it's right around here, but you get more VRAM and some newer features and stuff like that. Like, that's really where things are popping off right now, is the used market, and it's in that price point. RX 6600s are the way to go. If you can't afford that level of graphics card, go that route. It'll do well enough. You're a 1080p 60 gamer. You just need to come to terms with that. Be like 1080p 60. Until you're into that slightly higher range, that's the 1440p range. The 4K range, that's your like $800 plus range. And it seems like as long as Nvidia doesn't have any real competition, as long as TSMC doesn't have any real competition, and as long as the GP or the memory manufacturers collude, which we know that they do. Every few years they get fined for colluding, but they do it all the time. You know, it's the resolutions aren't going to come down. It's not like, oh, eventually you'll get $500 4K cards. I don't think that's going to be a thing because there's diminishing returns. There is no 8K. I know there's people like, yeah, there is an 8K. Nobody's ever going to care for gaming, especially on PC. Maybe on consoles, because TVs might get there. But you don't need 8K 27-inch displays. And yeah, maybe an 8K 65-inch, but very few people can fit a display that size or would even want to fit a display that size on their desk. So there's basically no more room in terms of resolution. It's just going to be 1080p, 1440p, and 4K forever for the most part. And then 8K will eventually become like its own thing. And then at that point, even the living room is gone, because even if you have a 120-inch display, 8K is still like overkill. Like, you'd need like a 400-inch display, like a movie theater. You'd need like a movie theater to go higher than 8K to make sense. And at that point, you're going to be so far away, you wouldn't be able to tell the difference anyway. So resolution's gone. And as long as, like I said, Nvidia is a monopoly, 4K cards are always going to be basically $1,000 plus. Your 1440p for new, it's going to be your like $500 to $1,000. And then 500 on down is going to be 1080p. We really just need Intel to kick them in the balls and for them to go, hey, look at that. We need to have like 12 or 15% margin to compete now. Then prices will come down a little bit. But once again, you still need TSMC to get kicked in the balls. There's a lot of kicking in the balls that needs to happen. A lot of monopolies out there need to be broken up. I just don't see it all happening. So I just recommend stay used, boys. So we'll end it with that one. Zen saying us crusty old techs are used to working with hardware. It should have no problem buying used. Yeah, you got to get good with the hardware, because we were talking in the Discord a little earlier, which if you're not a member, hit the join button, get in there. We chat about all sorts of cool stuff all the time. You got to tune your RAM. I did the videos on it. This is the reason why so many people are having problems with their games. The common denominator is just systems not without tuned RAM. And then everybody who has a tuned memory system is running fine. So like you have to do it. If you want to play the latest games, you need to have a fully optimized system. Our community will be more than happy to help you out in that one. I've got some videos on the channel that can get you started. And yeah, I just want you guys to not do what everybody else is doing. Do what's best for you. Buy the Asus boards when they're giving them away here in a few days. When you see a company in trouble, that's when you find the things that they sell that you want and you buy them at steep discounts. Take advantage of the situation, look out for yourself, and yeah, just have fun with it. Well, I recommend you go out and spend a couple $100 on just a test PC. And like I said, I know the GPU is a little pricey, but if you want to pick up a 2080 Ti, every month, all year long, we're going to do another system. And you can just, we're going to do less than $100 CPUs, less than $100 motherboards. So we're going to keep it cheap, but we're going to have fun with it. And I encourage you to follow along and have some fun, compete. So, alrighty, guys, I'm going to wrap it up there. Hope you guys have a great day. Look forward to seeing you tomorrow. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do so. Tomorrow's video is going to be really, really fun. I'm super excited to show you guys the system. We're going to compare to Jay and his numbers and basically validate everything that I just said a moment ago and the reason why you want to tune, because you can keep a 10-year-old CPU running almost all games. You won't do them all. Let's be real. But you can run almost everything today just fine. Even games that people with like 5950Xs are bitching about not working on their PCs. This can play. So, yeah, just want to throw that out there. That's why it's important. So I look forward to seeing you guys tomorrow. And yeah, that's really all I have for you guys here today. We'll catch you guys in the next video.